Okay, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have my lovely husband Joe.
What's up, gang?
He has been
Uplifter gang, let's
okay.
go.
He's been promoted to husband. I had to say you're my husband because the topic we're talking about today is what we expect, what we wish we knew about sex before we got married.
Yes.
So if you are younger than 18, maybe get off this for a little bit.
Yeah. So
We're not going to be vulgar
this
by
is
any
for
means.
it's not gonna be vulgar, but this is for young, couples who are about to get married, or even people who already married,
Yeah.
in a wholesome Christian marriage or whatever it is, a wholesome marriage,
And you
and
can just relate to this.
yeah, you can kind of relate and see our different perspectives. Hopefully you learn something,
Yeah.
you get something from this. That's the point. So
So we've been married 4 years. Let's put that out first. We've been married for 4 years. And before that we were dating for 2. And going into the relationship, it was like a no-brainer for us. We have been raised in the same churches and everything like that. So it's like we had the same beliefs and
we were abstinent.
Yes, we knew we were going to save ourselves for marriage, and there was no question. It wasn't like, oh, let's talk about it sort of thing. We were both very passionate about not having sex until we were married. And that was, I think, fortunately, a battle we didn't struggle with, agreeing that we weren't going to have sex before marriage, because I know a lot of couples, one person is like, the other person is like, no, I'm really strong, like really passionate about not doing this. Whether that's you're in church or not. I know that people associate abstinence to being in church, but there are people in the world that just feel strongly about not having sex before marriage.
It's a moral thing too.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean? It's about respecting yourself.
Yeah, so I'll let Joe go ahead and start, and just kind of give maybe your background of.
Yeah, so I'll start with my background and, I guess my expectations.
Yeah.
So like she said, we were both abstinent. We saved ourselves for marriage, and, before I got married, I thought, since I kept this covenant with God, when I got married and we finally had sex, it was going to be the best thing in the world. Fireworks every night, every second, whatever, you know what I mean? And one of the things I wish I knew, we'll start with number one, is it's not like Burger King. You can't have it your way. You can't have it whenever you want. It's not something that's on demand. And I say that to say this. So unfortunately, I got exposed to sex the wrong way. I never had sex, but before marriage, but I got exposed to it through pornography at a young age, and I struggled with it, at a young age. And porn is not only detrimental to you because it's a sin, but it destroys you mentally and spiritually, and it just destroys your mindset about sex. A false hope about sex, you know what I mean, and false expectation,
and false reality of it.
Arises from what you see on pornography.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things I expected was, man, we can have sex every second,
all day long,
4 or 5 times a day, whenever I want, and basically like on demand. And what I quickly learned is, nah, bro, it's not like that. Like, she doesn't have the same hormones I do. She's not, in the mood when I'm in the mood all the time and stuff like that. So you can't be selfish. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even, pornography will make you turn into a selfish person, like in your mind, you know what I mean? And when you're married, it's not about you. It's about both of us. Yeah. So I had to quickly learn that and reel myself back and, kind of discipline myself in that sense. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I learned. And what is your experience with that? Like, well, when you saw that, it's like, man, this dude's like kind of expecting it. And it's the thing is like she said, we've been married 4 years and I'm still learning and growing in that aspect. So,
well, I guess you said unfortunately. I will say fortunately, I wasn't exposed to pornography or any kind of, like, even if movies had sex scenes or something like that, I was always quick to fast forward through them. Or, I mean, I lived with my parents until we got married, so they were very like aware of what we were watching and what we were doing and things like that. So I was never exposed to anything sexual, which I'm grateful for. obviously it doesn't like my parents were very open with any conversation. So if I came home from school and I was like, someone was talking about this, like I would just bring it up to my parents and they were very like understanding and open. They never were like, "Oh, let's not talk about this." They would talk about it very openly. And I think they would prefer, and any parent would prefer this, if your child is confused or doesn't understand something, they'd rather you come to them rather than going on Google or asking their school friends because they might give you the wrong answer. So my parents were always my Google and like those things.
Yeah. They open the
Just
door, which is important, guys.
yeah.
Like for you guys, if you're gonna, plan to have kids,
Hmm.
and people in church too, this is why we're doing this. These things need to be talked about,
Hmm.
because if you're not exposed or educated, by the right people,
Yeah.
you're gonna be exposed in the wrong way,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
gonna ruin you at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so I genuinely had no understanding of like all of sex. I knew the general, like, okay, I know how to have sex sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing, just more so I know how to make a baby sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing, but nothing else. And I was grateful for that because I felt going into it, I didn't have a high expectation. I wasn't really yeah, I wasn't really expecting much. I knew that like as we got married, when we got married and like our relationship grew stronger, that we would learn new things and learn more about each other.
You would grow. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I wasn't worried about like, oh, if, I don't know how to do certain things or whatever. I'll
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. We'll figure out what works for both of
Mm-hmm.
us. So I wasn't really worried. Obviously, like on our honeymoon, I was nervous because I knew you had watched porn before.
Mm-hmm.
So I had in the back of my head, I'm like, oh man, what happens if I, disappoint him, sort of thing. But I knew it's about that. I'm like, well, I'm married. He's trapped, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not trapped, but like we'll figure it out, sort of
And
thing.
that's tough. Like when you express that to me, like
Yeah.
since you knew my past, like what I was exposed to, porn,
Mm-hmm.
and that it kind of became an insecurity, low key.
Oh yeah, it definitely did.
You know what I
Like
mean?
I think when we were dating, it wasn't a big insecurity because it was like I wasn't really thinking about that too much. But once we did get married and we started having sex, I realized how much it actually did affect me
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know, it just makes you think of like, oh, like are they comparing me to what these women are doing or whatever it is? And it's like it just made me feel like that I could have the possibility of letting you down and that I did want to meet your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
but I also knew that like one, there's a chance I didn't look like these people. There's a chance that, I wasn't as experienced as these people, so there's no way I was going to come out of, first day of our wedding be like, "Hey, let me do all this." I'm like, "There's
And
no
low key,
way."
that would be kind of concerned. I'm like, oh,
Exactly.
how do you know this stuff? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's another reason why it's good to remain pure
Yeah.
before marriage. But back to, me being exposed to that, I didn't have experience with actual physical sex, but I had those, I've been exposed to it in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And how can I explain this? I did kind of have like some expectation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh, she should know how to do this, or maybe she'll know how to,
Do all these crazy
do
things.
do
Yeah.
these things that that'll please both of us. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And that strips you of what the core thing of marriage is: learning and
Learning,
growing
yeah.
together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's another thing I wish I knew. Before we got married about sex is it's a learning thing, bro.
Yeah.
You have to learn and grow together. It's not going to be like this movie perfect thing,
Yeah.
this scene,
And
scenario
I think, yeah.
from the beginning. It's like, I was watching, a video yesterday. This guy explained it well. He's like, you can't expect, your sex life when you first got married to be like a Cadillac. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, not like a Cadillac. Let's say just like wine ages,
Mhm.
that's how intimacy in a marriage goes. It gets better, the longer it is, the longer you guys are together. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not going to be this, perfect thing at first.
Yeah.
And that's the fun thing. You learn, you grow
Yeah.
together. And 4 years in, it's not that long, but we're still learning and growing.
Yeah.
And that's important. You know what I mean? So go ahead. What were you going to say?
I think it's like Well, of course, I forgot what I was going to say, but I think you just have this expectation, and if it's not met, it's like slightly disappointing. It's like whenever your parents are saying like, "Oh, we're gonna go to Disney" or something like that,
Hmm.
and you're like, "Wow, okay, I'm really excited. We're gonna go to Disney," and then some plans change. You don't go to Disney. You're like, "Oh, we went to Busch Gardens,"
Yeah,
and it was like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's
That's
how I
true.
felt. I'm like, "Oh, I'm Busch Gardens,"
Oh yeah.
and so it's like slightly disappointed, but you're like, "Okay, this is
Hmm.
this is okay," but it was just like I just constantly felt that way. I just felt like, but you would never be like, "Oh, this isn't how I imagined it." You never
Yeah.
expressed that.
Yep.
You're always, very uplifting and being like, "No, it's great. Everything's fine."
Because I understood,
Yeah.
because thankfully I was delivered from, the pornography and stuff like that.
Yeah.
God brought me out, and
Yeah.
through the spirit of God, I can overcome that. But yeah, like you said, I never expressed it because I understood, thankfully, that
Yeah.
um she wasn't exposed to pornography and stuff like
Yeah.
you were.
Yeah.
She remained pure. She literally does not know anything.
Yeah.
And dog, you should have been the same way because we're supposed to be growing and learning together. And I understood that, so I would never dare to do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Because that's not right in any way. And
Do you think it would have helped you when you were struggling with porn? And I know we're not like really dipping into this, but I
hmm
kind of do want to. Like, if you would have known the effects that it would have had on me,
oh yes,
like, do you think it would have
oh
helped
wow,
you? Because I think we were actually before this podcast, we were just talking, just kind of like having general conversation, and I think you didn't realize the long-term effects that it may have had on me,
yeah, that's
even
true.
but I wasn't exposed to it.
Yeah,
I didn't know anything. I've never, it's never like, oh, this is what I watched or anything like that. I just,
but my sin affected you in the
yes,
future.
it did, and
Dang,
it was
that's
like,
crazy.
and we were just talking about it, and I think me just opening up kind of even opened my own eyes about how much it had affected me too. Just because again, it's something that again I always compared myself to mentally. I'm like, oh well, I don't know what these people are doing. I wish I could have known just so then, but not saying I wish. I was more so I wish you didn't know what they were doing,
Yeah.
sort of thing, and so then you would never have had that thought. But
If I
yeah.
knew how it would kind of affect you mentally,
Hmm.
with your, insecurity or confidence, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, that would have stopped me. I think that would have hindered me a lot.
Yeah. And I
You know
think
what I mean?
back to how you were saying, like, we have different drives. So some days you want to have sex more often, or I should say some weeks you want to have
Let's
sex
be
more
honest.
often.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest. We can be real,
Yeah, we can be real.
guys. It's always me. Not mine is man. Like okay, I work out.
And I want
I'm
to
a
say
red
this.
blooded
Yeah.
Haitian American. I work out. I got some testosterone burning, and I love my wife. She's beautiful. So I can be in the mood a lot quicker and like at a drop of a dime. And what I learned is even now I'm still learning. Like I said, my wife's not the same way. Girls are not the same way.
Yeah.
We don't have the same hormones.
Yeah.
They're not gonna just be in the mood just like that. We're more visual. They're more mental. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? She expressed that earlier. We
Emotional.
talked
Yeah.
about that. How it's important to show your wife that you love her. Spend some good quality time with her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what girls, love and appreciate.
At least
you know
I
what
do.
I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what my wife does. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And so I think, what is it? I keep on losing my train of thought. Sorry.
it's because she keeps looking at me. Guys.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
what you think? But like I said, we'll just go back to the expectation, or if I didn't, wasn't exposed to it,
Mhm.
if it would affect us better.
Yeah.
Yes, because I would already understand that, hey, we're gonna be growing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is learning. It's a
Yeah,
process.
that's
It's gonna
true.
get better and better and better, and not thinking, or not thinking, oh,
Oh.
maybe she knows this, or maybe she knows that. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes it awkward.
Yeah.
Sometimes
And
it does low key
yeah.
make it awkward because I'm
It
like,
does.
and then she low key be like, "Where'd you get that from?" I know she's like that in her mind, but anyways, go ahead.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
remember like it being such a strong insecurity, even still to this day, that like, the times that maybe I don't want to have sex, I instantly think, oh no, like, is this gonna like trigger him or
Mhm.
something like that to make him want to go back to those days?
Mhm.
And I instantly start like guilting myself into
Hmm.
having sex with you, and not saying it like in a bad way, but it's
And
like
that's
I
horrible.
do feel like some pressure to end up just like, oh, let's just have sex. So
Hmm.
then, I feel like I almost have to be the person to fight those temptations
Hmm.
for you, because I'm like, well, I'm his porn now,
Yeah.
basically.
And once again,
So
that's not fair.
yeah,
That's not fair. That's why pornography is horrible.
it
It
is. It's
is
terrible.
straight from the devil, because it, like we're expressing now, it'll affect, even if you don't think it's gonna affect your spouse or your future spouse or whoever you're gonna be with, it
Hmm.
will. And like I said, sex is not this on demand type
Yeah.
thing. It's, God made it for us to be in unison, in unity.
Someone's watching this and they're like, yeah, it is for me, and they're like,
Exactly.
okay, whatever.
Exactly. Well, that's not lasting. It's made to be something that's,
Cherish.
experienced,
Yeah.
cherished, and experienced, and what's the word? Not favored, but appreciated.
Yeah.
Together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got to work together. It's not a one man show. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I got to worry about how my wife's feeling and stuff like that, for
And
it
I
to be
think,
true, genuine. Building that true connection, not just, I feel bad, because that's not right. You know what I mean? And I felt bad that
yeah.
I ever made you feel that way.
No, it should
You know what I mean? Like, this is real stuff. So I
Mhm.
hope you guys are learning. You know what I mean?
I think also some people get like so far into their marriage and they find themselves running into like a cycle of where they're doing the same things. And then, like, I know there's been times where I'm like, oh, we've been doing the same thing multiple times. And I'm just like, not saying I'm bored by it, but it's like, I want to try something different. And I don't want to hurt your feelings and be
Mhm.
like, oh, let's try something different. But it's like, I think it's, people are afraid to communicate sometimes. So then
Oh man,
they just like
that's so
go
good.
with it and they're like, yeah, whatever, it's fine.
And that goes into communication too.
Yeah.
This all this goes hand in hand, and that's another thing. It's what's fun about sex in a marriage.
Hmm.
It grows.
Yeah.
You grow together, and you try different things. You
Yeah.
talk, and you get
But
better
some people
together.
lack the talking. They just lack the talking. They're just like, oh, she's not saying anything, so I must be doing good, or he's not saying anything, so everything must be fine. And it's like there's a line of like, you don't want to offend anyone because you both are in a very vulnerable situation. The last thing you want to hear from anyone is saying, it was all right, sort
That
of
is
thing,
true. That is
So
true.
it's like
So would you say, like, sorry?
No, you're good.
So would you say another thing that we wish we knew is how important communication
Yeah.
is
Yes, exactly. That's
about
exactly where I was
sex
going
in
for.
marriage?
Yeah.
Communication is key.
Because you can't be afraid to talk to someone. And like, as a woman, I know there's been times where I'm like, oh, that hurt my feelings. Like, oh, I thought I was doing a great job, which you've never been like, oh, well, terrible or whatever. But it's like, sometimes I'm like, oh, am I doing something wrong? But then I realize I'm like, no, we're all human.
Yeah, and
It's
I've been
like,
there too. Same thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, wanting to make sure, you're doing everything right, and not as a husband and as a wife, you want to please your
Yeah.
spouse. You know what I mean? And you do have that kind of insecurity in your head, like, dang, which makes it hard to talk about it, but it shouldn't be.
yeah.
You should want to talk about it to get better. Like, you shouldn't. I feel like you said, like, we're scared of getting hurt or butt hurt about
Yeah.
what someone said.
Yeah.
But that's a part of growing.
And I think as the
You can't grow
spouse that
without
is
truth.
receiving this information, say if you were like, oh, I didn't like how you did this. Well, you should not go back. Well, guess what? I don't like you doing this, this, and this. So you have to be both mature adults and being like, just accept the information and then maybe like, bring it back up another time. Because I think even me and you are both guilty of doing that. Like, we'll get into a conversation and then you'll say something like, oh, well, maybe we try something else. And then I'm like, well, I didn't like that. And like, I tried to
Yeah.
attack because I feel like I'm being attacked, when in all reality, you're not attacking. You're trying to just, change it up. And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't think people should be afraid to like talk to each other,
Yeah.
even if you maybe are a little afraid
'Cause
to
if
get your
you-
feelings hurt.
Because if you're worried about getting your feelings hurt and you don't communicate, you're
Mhm.
hindering growth.
Yeah, exactly. You are.
And that applies to everything in life.
Yeah.
You can't be afraid to, hear something to grow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you know your spouse loves you,
Mm-hmm.
take it as, I wouldn't say constructive criticism, but
But kind of.
I guess, you know what I mean? It's just for improvement.
Yeah, like
know
you
what I
said,
mean?
it goes with anything. Like, just like the last week, I have been cooking the same meal for like a year and a half. And I follow a Pinterest recipe. I follow it to a T. And there'll be days that like, I guess some days it just doesn't turn out right. And Joe, the other day, he's like, I don't mean to hurt your feelings and I don't want to hurt your feelings, but something was off about this meal today. I'm like, oh, and in my head, I wanted to be like, well, why don't you cook it? Why don't you learn how to cook
See,
it?
listen. Like, this is the thing. I was at first in my mind, because I know how she is, quick to say something back. So
Yeah.
you know, I presented it, you know, with a nice bowl.
Yes.
And I said, hey, you know, I don't mean this in a bad way, but this and this, you know, can you do a little bit better? I don't know what happened last time. It wasn't as good as it was. You know, the food wasn't as good as it was.
Yeah.
And in my mind, you know, I was expecting her to snap back real quick and say stuff because that's who she is. And she didn't. And that surprised me. I'm like, wow. I told her the other day, I'm like, wow, you grew. Because in the past, you would have snapped back and said something real quick. Why don't you cook it yourself? But you didn't. But, you know, the fact that, you know, you thought it in your mind, but you didn't say it.
Yeah.
That's growth right there.
I was holding back thoughts for sure, but then it just kind of dawned on me. I'm like, okay, like this, it's okay. We know you're not some Gordon Ramsay chef. Like, at least he's not sitting here just like not eating food. Like, that was my thing. I was like, well, I'm glad he said something because now he'll probably actually eat the food. Because there are sometimes I think I realize whenever I do make the like chicken and rice a little like on the best side, it ends up just leftovers don't get eaten and it gets wasted.
And another thing, like, wouldn't any person in life would want to get better at something?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so you can't.
And you have to step off your pride sometimes to be able to grow, and that's what it takes. And it takes you to realize like, oh, I'm not the best at this.
Yeah. And but if you don't hear it, you're not gonna change anything.
Yeah.
Same thing with, you know, communication in marriage when it comes to sex and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
just have to be good at communicating. So I think to like, I don't want to make this be the long podcast right now because this is a topic I'd love to bring back and maybe with some other couples. So just to wrap this one up, I think the importance of one, don't set high expectations. Whether you have been, had sex in the past, whether you have watched porn in the past, whatever it may be, to have set your mind up to an expectation, just drop them. Really, seek and try your best to, I don't know how it is to forget it. I don't know if there's a possibility to try to
I mean, you can pray about it. Yeah. But the thing is, like, ask God to change your mind and just go, approach it like, okay, we're in a marriage now.
Things are going to be different.
What happened in the past doesn't matter. None of that matters. We're growing together, and be patient and learn that it's about growing together and learning together and communicating.
And I think also with the communicating, talk about sex before you get married. And I think we had talked about it briefly. It wasn't like some in-depth conversations. And I think that might be one of my only regrets or something I wish I would have known, is to talk to you about sex before we got married. And I think part of it is because we are raised in a Christian, community. I don't know how to explain that. And it's kind of like you kind of keep it hush hush sort of thing. I think a lot of times people think, oh, you start thinking about sex, or you start talking about sex, that means you're thinking about sex sort of thing. And in all reality, you can go about talking about sex just like how we are. And it's very innocent and you're just trying to learn and understand. And during that conversation, you can mention what your expectations are maybe and be like, hey, or like say if you brought up, hey, I'm expecting this, I can be like, no, you're not going to get that from me. Sorry. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's something we like grow into as we get married, but week one, that's not going to happen. So, to be honest, so that would have been nicer to have. And rather than me constantly feeling like, oh, I should have told him that, like, or me trying to like meet these expectations more so. So,
and real quick side note,
no, you're good.
You're going to talk about this before marriage with your boyfriend or girlfriend or what is it called? Fiance. I lost my thought. Make sure you're with someone.
Yeah.
When you're doing this,
you could definitely bring your pastor in. Whether, I think that's okay. I think
but my situation is different.
Yeah, it's a little different.
My pastor is also my father-in-law, so that would never happen.
But I guess maybe you don't even have to. I think bringing like another couple in and just talking about it. It doesn't have to be your pastor. Obviously, that'd be nice. But just someone that you admire as a couple. And I think you'd be surprised on how the conversation would end, because maybe a conversation, or having a conversation with a couple that you admire, they would be open. I would hope they would be open and vulnerable with you as well and be like, y'all, you think we're perfect, but guess what? We have our flaws as well. And it
And
would help your
this is what it
stand. Yeah.
is, and this is what you should expect. You know.
Yeah. So I think those are the 3 pointers. You know, set your expectations low, not because sex isn't great, just so you don't have disappointments or anything, or that
Yeah.
you don't, you know, feel like certain way.
Don't come in expecting something.
Yeah, so don't come in expecting too much. 2, don't forget to communicate in all periods of your relationship, even before you're married. And was there
3,
a third?
I mean, the third one was basically like, understand that both of you guys are completely different.
Yeah. Okay.
Both of you guys are completely different, so you're gonna have to talk and work it out and be mindful of each other, and don't be selfish.
Yeah.
Both ways.
Yeah.
Oh, the scripture real quick. Let me read the scripture. This is funny because, you know, I would read the scripture and be like, this scripture would excite me, but
You're like, yeah, can't wait to get married and everything.
yeah, but it goes deeper than this. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 3. Let the husband render to his wife the affection due to her. And just like what we talked about, the affection that is due to her, right? The affection you're looking for during the day isn't just sex. That's not like how it is for women. You know what I mean? Just like you said, you appreciate valuable time together and stuff like that. That's the affection you love. You know what I mean? And it, you know, it makes you feel good. And it continues. It says, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body. Man, when I read this before I got married, I'm like, yeah, man.
That's right.
Yeah, she's mine. You know what I mean? Whenever I want it. Hey, that's not true. But the husband does. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another except with consent for a time. And that's another thing. I'm like, yeah, do not deprive every second. No, that's not what it meant. You know what I mean? Because in all reality, 4 years in, we understand it's not like that. And there's different factors. Like, we have kids now.
Yeah.
So it's
we can be looking at couples that are, I mean, there's definitely couples out here that are like, well, we don't struggle right now. Well, pop out 2 kids and maybe there will be more relation to this podcast.
It's a whole different dynamic when you have kids, and we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, there's many scriptures we talk about. That's funny. Like, there's one scripture in the Bible that talks about
enjoy her breasts.
Yeah, enjoying her breasts and stuff like that. And then I would go to him like,
we gotta do what the Bible says.
The Bible says I gotta enjoy her breasts. Come over here, you know what I mean? But yeah, I hope you guys learn some stuff from this, and some of the things we discussed was, I mean, obviously real, and hopefully you learn from it, and it.
By no means was this a comfortable conversation for us to have. I mean, it's fine for us to have this, but on camera, it is definitely a little awkward because we know that there's people from our church, there's people, you know, like our parents are going to watch this. So it is a little bit of an awkward conversation to have.
More for her than me. But we understand, and I'm proud of her for doing this. We understand that this is not just for us.
Exactly. That's why we know there's an importance to this conversation.
We don't do this for us.
Yeah.
This is for, you know, the community out there. Whoever's watching, to help them in any situation and help them understand that you're not alone.
Yeah.
We're all human.
Yep.
You know, we all go through stuff, and, you know, we're in this together. Exactly. We can share things to help each other and grow and stuff like that. And just to be relatable, that's important. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to Christians, you know, a lot of people think that Christians aren't real, you know, or people are, they're perfect. You know, no. We gotta.
It's just our shoes holding us down on this ground.
we gotta let these people know that it's real. We go through stuff, but the thing is, the difference between us is we have the knowledge and the relationship with God that helps us go through things. We have the power in Him to help us overcome, you know, and the knowledge, and He navigates us correctly so we don't fall into different things. You know what I mean? So that's it. But
that's it.
I keep taking over her
stuff.
No. You end your show.
You're good. Well, I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and stay tuned for more things.
Yes.